A Los Angeles chef on trial for the murder of his wife told investigators that he disposed of her body by boiling it for 4 days, then trashed the remains with other waste in a grease pit in his restaurant. David Viens, 49, was a chef at the Time Contemporary Cafe in Lomita, California. When on 18th October 2009, he came home and argued with his 39-year-old wife, Dawn Viens. At one point, he duct-taped her mouth and bound her hands and feet before falling asleep and finding her corpse the next morning, he told investigators. "I woke up. I panicked," Viens said. "She was hard." A jury in LA heard that Viens told investigators that in a panic, he stuffed his wife's body face down into a 55-gallon drum of boiling water and proceeded to cook it for 4 days. He said that he used weights to submerge Dawn's 105-pound body in the boiling water. "I just slowly cooked it, and I ended up cooking her for 4 days, he told investigators. Viens then took some of his wife's body's remains, mixed it with other waste from the restaurant, and poured it into the grease pit at the Time Contemporary Cafe. Other remains were placed in the dumpster in garbage bags. He said that afterwards, all he saved was his wife's skull, though a search of the house turned up nothing, nor did an excavation of the restaurant. "That's the only thing I didn't want to get rid of in case I wanted to leave it somewhere," he told police of the skull, saying that he left it in my mother's attic. It wasn't until 2011 that Viens learned that police investigating Dawn's disappearance began to suspect him. At that point, he leapt feet first from an 80-foot cliff in Rancho Palos Verdes, California. He survived the fall and is now in a wheelchair. Viens sat in the courtroom staring ahead and scribbling notes as a stunned-looking jury listened to the 2011 taped hospital bed confession to police. What Viens says in the taped interviews closely matches what he told his daughter and a former girlfriend, both of whom have testified for the prosecution. Details of exactly what occurred between David and Dawn Viens that night in October 2009 remain unclear. Viens told police that he and his wife had eaten at a California pizza kitchen before he did some work at the restaurant and then went out with friends. When he arrived back home, he said, the couple began to fight. In one interview, Viens said that he and his wife had argued after he accused her of stealing money from their restaurant. In a later interview, he said that the couple had taken cocaine, and in yet another interview, he said she was bothering him while he was trying to sleep. Viens told police that he had previously taped her up to prevent her from driving around wasted, whacked out on coke and drinking. "For some reason, I just got violent," Viens said. In September 2012, a jury convicted 49-year-old David of second-degree murder after about 5 hours of deliberation. During his sentencing in March 2013, David claimed that he did not cook his wife. He stated that he didn't remember confessing to the police while recovering from his injuries. Viens was sentenced to 15 years to life behind bars. David was denied parole in June 2021. As per prison records, he remains incarcerated at California State Prison, Corcoran, Kings County. His wife's skull was never found. A British man was arrested in Thailand after being found with 6 fetuses that had been dried and covered in gold leaf as part of a black magic spirit ritual. The remains of the unborn boys were found in a suitcase in his hotel room in Bangkok's Chinatown district. Chow Hock Quen, 28, who holds a British passport but is of Taiwanese origin, confessed to police that he had bought the fetuses several days earlier for almost £4,000. The source of the remains is unclear. He said he intended to smuggle them to Taiwan, where they would be sold for up to 6 times the purchase price on the internet, to people who believed that possessing them would bring wealth and good luck. He told police that he was hired by another Taiwanese man who regularly traveled to Thailand to collect the ritualistic fetuses. Worship of the fetuses, observed by some in the Chinese community, is a Buddhist animist practice known as Kumun Thong that is described in ancient Thai manuscripts. It required male fetuses, surgically removed from the womb, that were then dry roasted, as black magic incantations were said over the body before it was covered in gold leaf. Kuman Thong means golden baby boy. Followers believe that if the owner reveres the ritual fetus, its spirit will warn its possessor of danger and protect them. In practice, the fetuses have been replaced by wooden effigies. Chow Hock Kuen faces up to a year in jail for possession of the fetuses, which police said showed development of between 2 and 8 months. Officers made the discovery in the hotel in the Yaowarat district of Bangkok. They found that the fetuses had also been tattooed and were adorned with religious threads. Kolwiwat Kamhamnan of Bangkok police said he planned to sell the fetuses to clients who believe they will make them lucky and rich. Abortion is illegal in Thailand unless the pregnancy is the result of rape or incest or poses a threat to the mother's health. Women's rights groups estimate that up to 400,000 Thai women undergo abortions each year. Last year, 2 undertakers and a woman who collected fetuses from illegal abortion clinics were jailed after more than 2,000 corpses were found at a temple morgue when the crematorium furnace broke down. In a case that seems almost too incredible to be true, it was claimed that Kelvin Santos stopped breathing during treatment for pneumonia at a hospital in Belém, northern Brazil. He was declared dead at 7:40 p.m. on Friday, and his body was handed over to his family in a plastic bag. The child's devastated family took him home, where grieving relatives held a wake throughout the night with the boy's body laid in an open coffin. But an hour before his funeral was due to take place on Saturday, the boy apparently sat up in his coffin and said, "Daddy, can I have some water?" The boy's father, Antonio Santos, said, "Everybody started to scream. We couldn't believe our eyes. Then we thought a miracle had taken place and our boy had come back to life. Then Kelvin just laid back down the way he was. We couldn't wake him. He was dead again." Mr. Santos rushed his son back to the Abelardo Santos Hospital in Belém, where the doctors re-examined the boy and confirmed that he had no signs of life. He said, "They assured me that he really was dead and gave me no explanation for what we had just seen and heard." The boy's family decided to delay the funeral for an hour in the hope that he would wake up again, but ended up burying him at 5 p.m. that day in a local cemetery. Convinced that his son was victim of medical malpractice, Mr. Santos has now registered a complaint with the police, who have launched an investigation. He said, 15 minutes after rushing him away for resuscitation, they came and told me he was dead and handed me his body. Perhaps they didn't examine him properly. Dead people don't just wake up and talk. I'm determined to find out the truth." The local State Department confirmed the boy had been admitted to hospital in a critical condition and was declared dead after suffering cardiac respiratory failure. In 1981, Japanese murderer Issei Sagawa, the Kobe cannibal, killed his friend Renee Hartevelt and ate her remains. When Issei Sagawa murdered, dismembered and devoured Renee Hartevelt in 1981, he was fulfilling a dream 32 years in the making. Sagawa, who was born in Kobe, Japan, was studying comparative literature in Paris at the time of his crime. He was almost immediately arrested and sentenced to a psychiatric hospital. But after his extradition to Japan, he was able to check himself out of a different psychiatric hospital due to a legal loophole. In the years since, he has effectively made a living off his crime, and he's even become something of a minor celebrity in Japan. He has appeared on numerous talk shows and written manga novels that graphically depict killing and eating Hartevelt. He has even starred in softcore porn reenactments where he bites actors. And throughout his life, he has been chillingly unrepentant. When he discusses his crime, it's as if he believes it's the most natural thing in the world, and he plans to do it again. Issei Sagawa was born on April 26, 1949, and for as long as he can remember, he possessed cannibalistic urges and a fascination with eating human flesh. He remembered with fondness his uncle dressing up as a monster and lowering him and his brother into a stew pot for eating. He sought out fairy tales that involved humans being eaten, and his favorite was Hansel and Gretel. He even recalls noticing classmates' thighs in the first grade and thinking, that looks delicious." He blames the media's representation of Western women like Grace Kelly for sparking his cannibalistic fantasies, equating it with what most people would call sexual desire. Where other people dreamed of bedding these beautiful women, Sagawa dreamed of eating them. Issei Sagawa says the reasons behind his cannibalistic tendencies can't be explained to or conceptualized by anyone who doesn't share his exact urges. René Hartevelt was a Dutch student studying with Sagawa at the Sorbonne. Over time, Sagawa struck up a friendship with her, occasionally inviting her to his home for dinner. At some point, he gained her trust. He attempted to kill her once, unsuccessfully, before actually murdering her. The first time the gun misfired when her back was turned. Though most would take this as a sign to give up, it only pushed Sagawa further down his rabbit hole. It made me even more hysterical, and I knew that I simply had to kill her, he said. The very next night he did. This time the gun fired, and Hartevelt was killed instantly. Sagawa only felt a moment of remorse before he became elated. I thought about calling an ambulance, he recalled, but then I thought, hang on, don't be stupid. You've been dreaming about this for 32 years, and now it's actually happening. Immediately after killing her, he raped her corpse and began cutting her open. The first thing I did was cut into her buttock. No matter how deep I cut, all I saw was the fat beneath the skin. It looked like corn, and it took a while to actually reach the red meat, Sagawa recalled. The moment I saw the meat, I tore a chunk off with my fingers and threw it into my mouth. It was truly a historical moment for me. Ultimately, he said his only regret was that he hadn't eaten her while she was alive. What I truly wished was to eat her living flesh, he said. 2 days after killing Hartevelt, Sagawa disposed of what remained of her body. He had eaten or frozen most of her pelvic region, so he put her legs, torso, and head into 2 suitcases and hailed a cab. The taxi dropped him off at the Bois de Boulogne Park, which had a secluded lake inside it. He had planned to drop the suitcases in it, but several people noticed the suitcases dripping blood and notified the French police. When police found Sagawa and questioned him, his response was a simple admission. I killed her to eat her flesh, he said. Issei Sagawa awaited his trial for 2 years in a French prison. When it was finally time for him to be tried, French judge Jean-Louis Bruguière declared him legally insane and unfit to stand trial, dropping the charges and ordering him to be held indefinitely in a mental institution. They then deported him back to Japan, where he was supposed to spend the rest of his days in a Japanese mental hospital. But he didn't. Because the charges in France had been dropped, the court documents were sealed and couldn't be released to Japanese authorities. Therefore, the Japanese had no case against Issei Sagawa, and no choice but to let him walk free. On 12 August 1986, Issei Sagawa checked himself out of the Matsuzawa Psychiatric Hospital in Tokyo. He walked the streets where he lived free to do as he pleased. A terrifying thought when one hears that the threat of life in prison didn't do much to quell his urges. The desire to eat people becomes so intense around June when women start wearing less and showing more skin, he said. Just today, I saw a girl with a really nice derriere on my way to the train station. When I see things like that, I think about wanting to eat someone again before I die. Sagawa had refrained from cannibalism, but that didn't stop him from capitalizing on his crime. He wrote restaurant reviews for the Japanese magazine Spa and enjoyed success on a lecture circuit, talking about his urges and crime. Sagawa allegedly suffered from diabetes and suffered 2 heart attacks in 2015. He has since died of pneumonia on 24th of November 2022 and was given a funeral only attended by relatives with no public ceremony.